Wrong one. Sorry about that. I got to play with three computers.
Recording in progress.
All right. Good evening, everyone. This is the South Suburban Computer Club of the Chicago Computer Society for January 2025. Uh, Offhand, I've got one of two presenters. I'm not certain, and I thought I made that clear in the invite and announcement. There's a second one, but he's at another meeting. If he can break away, he'll try and come in and do a reasonably short presentation also. Uh, Now, I normally ask at this time, does anybody have a problem, question, opinion, or news that the rest of us should know about? And some people think uh, they have nothing, but they're looking forward to open forum. Open forum asks, do you have any problems? Do you have any questions? Do you have any opinions or news items? So they're one and the same. No one should ever have to say, oh, this is open forum.
Okay.
So that's my 2 cents. So does anybody have anything to bring up?
I don't know if this is pertinent for this meeting, but I did get an email that said that this is the computer club is looking for like a PR marketing person. Can
Yeah.
you expand on that a little bit? What's or
Uh, Basically speaking, you have to go back into the early 1990s. We had for a short time some marketing sales like people um to help get the public to know about CCS. But then they wanted to get paid some money that the board didn't go along with, so they quit that. And really, we have had little to nothing in the way of real marketing or sales promotion of CCS to the public. All right, any other questions?
so that would be like a social media kind of thing?
It could be social media, it could be if they know publications, usually
Yeah.
like community ones that are around because the big ones probably are going to ignore us anyhow.
Okay. Okay.
And if anybody can get anything on radio or television, that would be another thing too. I know we had something on radio once, but I don't think we ever had anything on TV.
We had local cable at one time.
Okay. All right. Well, since I don't hear anybody else stampeding, I've got three PSAs of my own to enlighten everybody with, I guess is the best way to phrase it. Uh, Problem number one, PSA. Uh, Somewhere in the life of Windows 10, I don't remember exactly when it was, in Microsoft wisdom, took a feature called restore points that normally was always on and turned it off. Those who knew about it knew to go in and turn it back on if they wanted restore points. So this is true of 10 and 11. And let's see here. Let's see if I can share with you my desktop. And get out of my way. Now, this magnifying glass, some of you, whether you got 10 or 11, may have a search box. I changed mine to an icon of the magnifying glass, gives me more real estate on my taskbar. And to do that, if you want to, right click, ask for the taskbar settings, and up here in search, there's a box here. You normally would have the bottom one with that blue icon, and I changed mine up here to just the icon of the magnifying glass. So if you want to get a little more real estate on the taskbar, you can change it to that. It functions a little differently. You don't just go to the search box, type in your stuff. You click the magnifying glass, and it will launch the same search screen. Whoops, come on. And so I come down here, and in the search box up at the top, I key in restore. I'll just put P. It says create a restore point. Open it up. Now it's going to ask for administrative rights, unless you've got that shut off, which is not really a good idea. It hurts your security. This screen here, I don't think there's any way I can get that bigger. This is an old screen of Microsoft's, and yeah, not a darn thing I can do about it. So it is the size that it is. In the middle here, you may only have one line. I have two, but that's for a different reason. And it says it's on. If it says off, then you need to go down to the configure button, open that up, turn on the protection, and then you have a slider here for how much space you want. Now understand, this normally defaults to 10% of your disk space. These days, that could be a big, gigantic chunk of real estate on your storage. So you shrink it down, and what it does is it holds as many restore points as it can, and then starts deleting the oldest ones to put in a new one. So what does a restore point contain? A restore point contains all your system settings and a lot of other registry information, and sometimes additional files that are backed up into kind of like a image that's a snapshot. So it's just like taking a snapshot picture on your phone. And so mine's set down to just barely over 5 gigabytes. Now, once you've got it on, if you have a restore point, you come up to this button up here, and you click next, and it'll show you any restore point you currently have. And if something went wrong, I can restore the last or most recent restore point, and it may correct the problem by itself. But you can lose information depending on what this date is here when the restore point was created, and today's date when you're doing it on a restore, okay? That's important to keep in mind. Now, back to here. I can, at any time I want to, maybe I'm going to be doing something that might have some risk in screwing up my system. Doesn't matter what it is. I can come down here to this button and create a manual restore point. I can put in there any kind of a label I want to on this line here, and I suggest you also put in the whole year, month, day, date in there. That way you know how long ago you made this, and eventually it will be dropped because after a while, a lot of the cleanup routines say they will automatically delete old manual restore points. So that's another thing you can look forward to. Now, why do I bring this up? PSA point 2. I had somebody who I haven't seen for a number of years, but I did talk to him over the phone sometime in the last year when he had a smaller problem, and I helped him over the phone, and that was it. But he had some kind of a problem. I don't know what it was for sure. He can't tell me. He's a senior citizen too. And he took and found under Windows Update, because it's a Windows 10 system, restore point recovery. And so he launched that. He didn't read what it says. And he clicked on it. And his problems got worse to the point where he had to come get my help. And I had to keep his machine for a little while in this cold weather to correct the problem. The problem is he didn't look at the date of that restore point he clicked on. It had a 2019 or a 2020 date, because when I got into his system, I also knew of his backups, and his backups were only 4 of them going back to 2019 and 2020, and he hadn't backed up anything since then. He had no restore points other than these real old ones. And dutifully, it put the system back to 2019 or 2020. And you'd be amazed how much disappears in because you did that. Almost every program on his system disappeared, and that's why he had to get with me. A good portion of his data, though, was still there, because usually the restore point does not back up any data files. That's your province to do. And so I had to try and figure out how to restore most of his programs, and eventually do some training with him on that. So that's PSA 2. Read what comes up. And if it's got dates on it, you don't restore something on a restore point that's over 4 years old. I wouldn't even have taken and run any of his backups that he had from 2020 and restore them. I would have just done a clean install if I had to, and rebuilt the whole system. So that's PSA 2. PSA 3 was an oddball. You don't hear this one too much, and I think that's because a lot of people don't know and understand how to find out what kind of problem their system had, if they got a blue screen of death or something they were doing caused the system or a browser to crash. Well, I had an old machine I'm getting ready to repurpose, but I wanted to check the machine out before I tore it apart to pull out the guts and put new guts in it that's a little more modern. And the problem turned out to be that back about 2 years ago, roughly, I stopped using the machine because I was constantly having problems, and the way it was acting at the time, it looked like the motherboard was dying. Well, I was just checking to see if the motherboard really did die. It did not. And it was not dying. It was working just fine. But I had already removed and repurposed the drives, which doesn't matter because they were just a test bed of Linux distros that I toy around with to see what they're like and so forth. So the question became, what the heck caused the problem? So I decided to stick in a Linux live distro. Most of them, not all of them, will bring up a grub screen, and usually the last entry is a memory test. And I said, what the heck? I'll try it. Well, the first live distro I did, I clicked on it. It did absolutely nothing. Apparently, they at one time had the memory test program on the device, but somebody removed it from the image, but not from the grub menu. So I put in another distro, and this one did work. And it automatically runs, it's a standalone program, no operating system or anything. It's called Mem 86. And that's the program name. You could get a version of this for any operating system. So I ran it. Now, at the time, I had two sticks of memory, 2 gigabytes each for 4 gigabytes. It went through and said everything passed with flying colors. But I had some other memory for that same unit. So I took out that memory. I put another set of memory in that was twice as much memory, total of 8 gigs. And I started it up and went to another computer to do some other work. When I came back, it was still running, and that was a surprise. And there was a sea of red. And to say it failed would be an understatement. But I took out one of the modules and I ran the test on that. At first, it was starting off good, and after maybe about 3 to 5 minutes, one line, red line, popped up, which means failed. But I left it going until it went to the end. Well, before it got to the end, there was tons and tons of red. So that one's a dead memory stick. I swapped it out with the other 4 gig memory stick, ran the same test, and basically got the same problem. And I think those two sticks might have been originally in when I was having problems a couple years back. Then I had two other sticks. They were also just 2 gigabytes apiece per 4 gigs. I tried them out, worked perfectly. So I ended up having a machine works fine, but it had a couple sticks of memory that were very flaky and no explicit uh, error message would pop up about that. And the only way you can find out is through running the mem test. Now, in addition to that, I have been on a laptop recently, periodically Firefox crashing. And I sometimes do research on it, so I collect a lot of stuff. And it turns out I decided to save the information, shut it down, put that live stick of Linux in, ran the mem test on it, and in the beginning for quite a while it was absolutely fine. Then all of a sudden it went bad. And so I stopped the test. I took out one stick of memory out of the machine, ran the test again. It went through and said passed. So what was the problem? The other stick of memory that I had already taken out had gone south on a second machine. This is something that you don't hear that much about anymore. And it used to be a big deal back in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. But generally, we don't hear that much about it. But it wouldn't hurt to try and make a note that once a year, or when you've got a mysterious problem occur that you don't know what it's from, have a mem test on a USB drive. Uh, it has to be bootable for that to work correctly. So you have to run the mem test, and once you get that mem test run, you'll know whether all your memory installed on each machine you may happen to have is good or not. If it's good, wait until next year. If it's bad, now you got to start isolating down which module or modules are bad. And to do that, it's best to take out all the memory sticks but one that's in slot one, run the test. If it's good, great. If it's bad, well, you already know that one. You take it out and you put another one of those that you took out in the same slot, run the test again, and you keep doing this until you've checked all the modules out. You'll know which ones are bad and you need to get replacements. Because bad memory, depending on where it is and what type of a problem it is, can cause all kinds of corruption problems and or problems of stability on your system. The latter one, I mean the former one that I mentioned, which is data corruption, that is files on your storage device, and you may not know it unless you had tried to bring up that file and it doesn't work anymore, or something is very wrong with the document if it's a document type of file, and you have to figure out what caused that. Well, it could have been a memory problem. So you've got to look there. Sometimes you can use check disk to correct some problems. It depends on how severe the problem was. If it's like a one character problem, maybe you can fix it, get away from it, and be okay. In other cases, it's so severe, if it's a program file, you'll probably have to reinstall it. If it's a data file, if you don't have a backup, you're out of luck. Anybody got any questions of these? Any comments?
I think I missed one point. Is this testing USB thumb drives, or this is testing memory modules within the built into the computer itself?
First off, a flash drive, like your hard drive or SSD, are storage devices. Check disk is the only thing that can check that.
Okay.
As far as mem test, this is your real, honest to goodness memory.
Okay.
Whatever you've got in the machine, it doesn't matter whether it's 1 gigabyte. Some Linuxes will run that small of a memory. Some will even go lower than 1 gig, on up to 128 gigabytes. If you've got 128, good luck. It's going to take you a long time to find out what memory module is probably bad in your system, because it would indicate you got probably 4 slots, unless you've got a server style motherboard, in which case you might have 8 total memory slots. And each module is 64 gigabytes in size. And if you got a bad module, it's going to take a long time to test out just to make sure that each module is good. And then when you've done that, it's also going to be a case where if you got a bad module, you better hope it's under warranty. Otherwise, you're going to be eating that module for dinner. Okay?
Mhm.
So it's RAM. It's just RAM then it's testing.
That is memory.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the true definition of memory. RAM storage is memory. The
Okay.
other is storage. Storage means that when the power is removed, everything stays there. When you remove power from RAM memory, it disappears.
Okay.
Bert?
Tim, the in terms of memory sticks, how do you know if you got the right kind of stick to go in that kind of computer?
The best way of doing it, if it's a running system right now, the easiest way I know of doing it is to come over to a blank area on the taskbar, right click, bring up Task Manager. Then, now this is 11, 10 looks different. You got tabs across the top. The second tab is called Performance. In 11, the second tab going down is your Performance tab. Click on Memory. It tells you that you've got this much memory in the machine, and you come down here and it says, I've got 2667 megahertz memory. If you check that out, odds are the only memory modules that have that speed are DDR4. So that's one avenue you can take. A second way of doing it, hold down the Windows key, press the R key, and you get a run box. Key in there MSINFO32, press enter. You can come down to hardware resources. Oops, I gotta expand that. You hit that plus sign in front. Here's memory. It gives you a lot of information about it, but it doesn't say exactly the model you have. That's a problem. So if you want to get more information, the best thing to do is to go to the manufacturer's site, like HP.com, Dell.com, Asus.com/US, etc. And you go to system support, and in system support, uh, they're going to ask you what the make and model of your computer happens to be, and that's on a label somewhere on your computer, and it could even be on the bottom. But in any case, you put that information in, and one of the options that'll come up is the manuals for that machine. You can also use that same information in a general search, Google search, DuckDuckGo, Yahoo, Bing, etc., and look up that way to get the manual. And what you want is not the user manual, you want the technical service manual. It will have everything about your computer in that manual, including what modules. So you're either dealing with DDR or DDR1, some call it, DDR2. And if you got either one of those have been obsolete for so long it's not funny. DDR3 is still in some use, but it hasn't been manufactured really in a long time. It is still readily available. I think 2 is still available. I wouldn't be surprised if DDR1 is still available. The DDR4 was the previous version of memory. It is now classified as obsolete because the current standard is DDR5 memory. I currently have no DDR5 systems. Mine are mostly DDR4 for 11 and even some non-11 stuff. And then I have a little bit of old stuff that even goes back before DDR memory. And good luck on getting that, but it might still be available because anybody will buy just about anything out there. You can find it usually on eBay.
Are these sticks backwards compatible? So if
Pardon?
you had a 5, can you put it in a machine that had a 4?
No. Memory modules, whether they're the small SODIMM modules. One second here. This is SODIMM memory module. It's for laptops. And the bigger sticks, like this one, is for desktops. Both styles have in them a notch. Those notches change with each version of memory that's out there. So 5 has a notch in one specific location, so you can only put the module in correctly when that slot is in the right position. Otherwise, it rocks back and forth and will not seat down in. Same with DDR4, it's a different location. 3, a different location. 2, 1. And even what existed before DDR memory was also something that had a notch. And you'd have to go back to some of the earliest PC machines that had strange modules. I can't even remember what they were called at the time. Uh, those didn't have notches, but as time moved forward, they started putting the notches in to prevent you putting the wrong memory modules in the machine. There are very, very few machines that were, and they were all desktop to my knowledge, uh, had a small transition uh, of memory where they would give you 2 slots of one type and 2 slots of a newer memory module. So you could, in 2 slots, use the old memory, or you could use 2 of the new format. But as I recall, you could not use both types because the odds of them having the same speed was pretty small.
Thank you.
The other thing about memory modules, besides that one little characteristic, is in particular the speed of the memory. The speed of the memory, you can to some extent mix speeds, but if you mix the speed, they will only go as fast as the slowest memory speed module. And if you got 4 slots, you're putting in 2 pieces of memory that work together. And if one of them has a speed of 2133 megahertz, and the other one has 2667 megahertz, they will both run at the slower 2133 speed. But you cannot mix different sizes in the pairs. However, if you got 4 slots, you could have 2 modules that are 8 gigabytes each for 16, and in the other 2 slots, put in 2 modules that are 1 gig, 2 gig, 4 gig, or 8 gig for up to 16 more gigabytes, and they add together to give you your total amount of memory. And again, if the speed between the first set and the second set has a different speed, everything slows down to the slowest speed. Now, don't you regret asking that question?
No, I found it very interesting.
It's one of those things. Right now, it's there's no way around it. And honestly, you've got to stick with what you've got. But occasionally, I do have mixed speeds, and or I may have 3 or 4 sticks of memory. So I have a pair and either 1 stick in the other set or 2 sticks in the other set, and they may be of a different size. That works fine. If you're in a laptop, the most I've ever seen in a laptop is 2 SODIMM modules, and I have seen a few only have 1 SODIMM module. And there, each module can be a different speed or a different size, and it's a cumulative because it treats it in the laptop as separate items. But it also will cause all your memory to go at the slowest module's speed. Okay?
Yep.
All right. Well, I got my PSAs out of the way, I think. At least I hope so. My rat ran out on me. All right, let's get this closed off because what we have next is Bob Primak is doing a presentation. I'll let him carry it away, but I will say I have the information for you guys in the handout of what he's going to be, at least the two main things I know of he'll be presenting.
Okay. Well, first of all, all right. Let me save something. First of all, I've been playing around with touching up my appearance for Zoom and other remote meetings. And it used to be that Intel had a graphics software called ARC, ARC. That used to include things called studio effects, where you could touch up your appearance, and there was a virtual webcam available. Virtual webcams can be set up on Windows, and there are various kinds of drivers and software that will allow you to do that. Now, the particular driver that I have been using, let me get over to the webcamoid site, and then I can share something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to do their downloads. Okay, now I'm going to do a little share screen if I can find where the share is on this version of Zoom. There it is. And I'm going to share my entire screen, and let's do sound and optimize video. Okay, so we have my desktop, right?
Yep.
Okay, and I'm going to hide the floating controls so that you can see everything. So I'm going to bring up my browser, and this is the site of Webcamoid, and it's at GitHub, or GitHub, however they pronounce it these days. And Webcamoid, if you go to download anything, is going to turn out to be, it's going to turn out that it costs money. You can get Webcamoid for various operating systems, but if you want to download any of it, it's $1.50 and upward. However, it does work on all kinds of different operating systems, everything except Apple for some reason. But that doesn't mean you can't download a driver. I'm going to leave aside what happens with Linux because Linux is different from Windows. So the virtual camera driver for Windows is called AK Virtual Camera. So that's the under the hood way that these things work. There is, however, a free program called SplitCam. And we'll go over to their site. And this is only Windows and Apple. If I were doing Linux, I would have a different set of software, and at the Linux meeting, we can talk about that. But what we have is the ability to split the webcam among various applications. It does have broadcasting, which I haven't done, which is live stream. There's an audio mixer. There are webcam effects. I use the webcam effects. Let's come down to webcam effects. Video splitting, which we aren't going to do a whole lot of. You can do masks like you do on Zoom with those funny little masks, which I don't use. HD video broadcasting, which allows streaming to various places. Services that are supported, streaming to popular services including Twitch, and there's a Zoom video. The Zoom video feature allows you to zoom the video in SplitCam and stream only part of it. Well, let's take a look at some of what it's doing. You set up scenes. This is similar to what you would do in OBS Studio or anything else, only it's very much simpler. And let's take one of my scenes. I have another webcam, and it's got a scene set up. And There are some settings. Let's do driver properties. Okay, with this particular driver properties, it is using Logitech features, which I do not want to do. There. You have to go over to advanced settings. Each brand is going to do weird and different things if you have other software that was supplied by the manufacturer, which I do. I'll show you with the other webcam what it looks like when you are using a more generic driver. But it does things like color intensity, which would give you more distinct colors or less distinct colors, even down to black and white practically. And you can control brightness. And there is a white balance, which would change. I've got it on auto. Let me uncheck that for a moment so that we can go toward the red and toward the blue. And I'm going to put it back on auto. And you can do mirrored. And in order to do mirroring, I would have to save this, which I'm not going to do. It can do mirrored. And there's a thing called exposure, which I'm not going to play with. So there are also other webcam controls which allow following your face, although there are no faces in this one. And various other. It also does things about volume. So I'm going to cancel out all that. Would you like to save changes? Well, let's do that. Now I have another scene. This is me in Zoom. So one thing that I can do is control whether it focuses on just me or whether it comes out to the rest of my room, which right now has boxes because I'm moving stuff. And I usually like to have my face and a little bit of my shoulders. And let's see what else we can do. There are also effects. And these are just basically presets. Right now I'm using one called Wildlife. You can customize, but I won't. But let's say I wanted to do the Kodak effects. That will be different. Color balance, nature. And there's one called Black Hawk Down, which I like for some rooms. And this is the original. The original I don't like because I've done some color adjustments. So we'll just do that. Warm Camera is another one that shows the room differently. So let me just leave it as Wildlife. And there are artistic effects, which I don't use. And there are Sharpen and Blur. I'm using Sharpen because I don't want to blur things out. Now, Sharpen does have the disadvantage that it may cause some pixelation in things like my beard, which has the mottled salt and pepper look. Color and light. You can do brightness. You can do color balance. Right now we've got color balance here, and if I really wanted to, I could change the skin tone, and that'll work. I can change saturation again, or more saturation. Target tone, I don't really know exactly what that will do. Oh, that'll make me different colors. I can go all the way over to here. I can target that tone, but right now for normal skin, at least for those of us who are not dark skinned, it'll look about right like that. And there are other things. There's brightness that can be controlled, right like that. Contrast. I might want more contrast. I might want less. I think I want a little bit more. This one will do exposure. Now let's see. See, that's just like a camera. Opening a wider aperture, a longer exposure will make it wash out. Less exposure will make it go dark and gray. I have been using highlights and shadows, and I'm not going to do transparency because I'm not using backgrounds in that way. There is something called gamma in photography That's a little technical, but basically it changes the color in a different way, and it makes multiple kinds of changes simultaneously. I'm going to leave it as it is because I like the way it is. I'm using dynamic contrast, and I believe dynamic contrast will make the contrast more even over the entire scene. I'm not sure entirely exactly how that will work. Skin tone, again, I can do things with that. So let's see if there's background and tracking. Background and tracking, you'll notice if I move, the virtual camera moves with me. The actual webcam isn't moving. So it's purely a software effect. It's a driver effect. I can also turn on chroma key, which I'm not going to do because if I do that, it's picking up the wrong colors and doing weird things. Color pop is another thing you can do. If I turn that on, I can perhaps make some of the colors come out. And if I turn it down, it has a tendency to dull the highlights in a way that's pretty nice too. But it also may be freezing up my video. It uses too much resources. So I'm not going to use that effect, but I'll use the face tracking. If you have too many effects on and you don't have a graphics processor, a GPU, you're going to be in trouble. You could even crash yourself out of a meeting. And that's what I don't want to do. They also have lookup tables, which I'm not going to get into. Color and light, I just did. Okay, I'm going to save some changes. And that's going to be the scene for now. I want to change one last thing. And that's also going to be in chroma key. No, it's going to be in color and light. What I want to do is make my exposure a little bit less and save that. Okay. The other thing that I can do is just a plain old driver property for sharpen and contrast. I can turn up sharpness using that and turn it down. If I turn it down a lot, well, it isn't going to do a lot because of the other effects that I'm using. Don't forget there's also zoom effects going on here too. But brightness again can be directly manipulated, and so there's a lot of stuff you can do. I'll do that, and so you can then save it as presets which qualify as a scene. I can add a scene, and I can do a plus, and it's going to be one of my webcams. No, I'm not adding a browser. I'm adding a webcam. There we go. And let's suppose that I had another camera. I would add that camera. And this is how it comes up. This is the original. So I'm going to save that as the original and not manipulate it because I've done a lot to manipulate this. And I still am not happy with something here. One last thing. Let me see if contrast. It's going to be the brightness, and I want to do it at the driver level. Just make it a little darker. For some reason, it comes out differently depending on the application you're using. And now let me see how all this looks in Zoom. So that's what I know about split cam. There may be other things I don't know about the streaming or anything like that. Escape to get my meeting controls and stop the share. Anybody got any questions about what kinds of things go on when you're adjusting your appearance for a meeting? Yeah, Dennis.
One thing I wasn't clear on, I think it was sharpness, and there was something called blur.
Yeah.
And could you like make your whole image, everything just be blurry? I mean, what is a blur to?
Blur would blur your foreground image. Blur background is a different matter. Blur background is an effect.
So you can make your whole face blurry?
You can, and you might want to blur out your face for various reasons.
Huh. Okay.
I mean, one of the things that'll do is remove the appearance of wrinkles for those who have them. And it'll do.
How blurry can you make it? I mean, can you?
You could probably blur it out enough so that you would appear virtually anonymous. Although there's
Okay.
always software that can pick out the pixels and reconstruct.
Oh, there
So,
is. Okay.
yeah, even if you blur your face in a meeting, there is software that can bring it back. The
Huh.
data is
Okay.
still there.
Okay.
So, anything else?
Does
Hearing none?
anybody see possible value in it? No? You're all going to be bumps on a log somewhere? Like a turtle?
I'll tell you one thing that is a value proposition for it. If you have a really cheap webcam, you're not going to look good in a meeting. But a virtual webcam software can make even a cheap webcam's image. This is not an expensive webcam. It can make the image look better.
Okay, any further comment on this particular topic? Before we try and proceed on, I've got a little problem here that I'm working on. Something I goofed on. And like I said, the other speaker, hopefully he'll make it to the meeting later before we all quit. Be with you in a minute to show you something else. I inadvertently deleted something I needed. Oops. Darn it. And it'd be nice if you guys talk a little bit.
Well, I kind of missed the beginning of the meeting when Wayne was talking about this trip, so I didn't really under. I
None,
came in later. So where exactly did you go, Wayne?
Oh, yeah, I went to Antarctica.
next time, show up at the meeting before the beginning.
I don't know if
Certainly
Wayne
show up.
heard me.
Certainly show up before 10 after.
Yeah,
So where did you go, Wayne? I mean,
Antarctica.
oh, you did. Okay.
Yeah, we did an expedition thing on one of these ships.
He wanted the warm summer weather.
Yeah,
So
it was 35 degrees at some points there.
That's
you
warmer than
spent
we've been. That's
Yeah,
warmer than we've been.
yeah, it was warmer. There were days it was raining and not snowing.
That
so
was
it took
about a
a
week ago.
couple days to get this to this particular spot.
Oh yeah,
God.
had to fly from Chicago to Houston to Buenos Aires down to the end of Chile, and then it was 2 days crossing the Drake Passage,
Hmm.
and then the same coming back.
And that's a pretty big boat. You said it was 300 something?
Yeah, and they had what was called a hangar in it. Had a submarine in it. They had a couple fast speedboats. They had a whole bunch of um, Zodiacs that they would take us out. to get to shore. And
Did you go down in the submarine?
no, I did not.
Did you have the
Chicken.
choice?
They could only hold like about 6 people. The guy was telling me that the bubble on the submarine, they have bubble at the front and the back. They're like about 3 inches thick. The plexiglass bubble. They said that they can go down like 1,000 meters, and the
What?
thing shrinks.
That guy who went to the Titanic also
Right.
said his was okay
That's right.
too, but
His was an entirely different design.
Okay, well, I think I got my issue resolved. We'll find out here in a minute. All right. And okay. Now, like I said, I've got in the handout about split cam, web camoid, or however you announce it.
Webcam idea.
Okay. Now, this is, oops, and good old commercial. Go. Good. Oops. No, thank you. Gee whiz, folks. Now I've got a setting I got to get to. I forgot about. Optimize for sharing. Share computer sound. Okay. Let's see what happens here.
What you guys got another video on 10 bad things about mini PCs. I get asked questions about mini PCs all the time, about some of the good things and some of the bad things. So I thought I'd make a video showing you some of the bad things about mini PCs to look out for. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty about each individual brand of mini PC because there's tons of them.
One note, I paused it here. Note the middle machine here and look at something I have never heard of, but it's a warped top on that one. I don't think that's the way it's supposed to be.
We are just talking in general about any mini PC, and that's what we're going to be looking at. So we've got two here, which I'm going to take a look at, and then we'll talk about them. So here is a budget, cheap mini PC. It's getting on a bit, this one, but you can see made of plastic, and again, this is a thing to look out for. The cheaper ones are generally made of plastic. The more expensive ones are made of metal, and that's what you can expect if you're going cheap. Also, cheaper components are going to definitely be in cheaper models. And if you want branded...
Dang it. What the heck just happened?
to desktop computers. As you can see here, due to the small form factor of these mini PCs, many of these have fewer available ports like USB, HDMI, and even network connections compared to larger desktops. So bear that in mind. It doesn't really matter what model you're going for, just have a good look and make sure you're looking for maybe expansion slots, maybe you're looking for more HDMI ports, maybe Thunderbolt 4 or Type-C connections are important to you, so make sure you get the right version. Next, we're going to take a look at the limited upgradability due to the small size on some mini PCs. You can see this one does support an actual SSD in here, or a hard drive you can put in here, but not all of them have this, and this one obviously is a cheaper branded one, and you can see it's got lower quality branded parts inside. There is no extra slot here for an M.2 for an extra storage on here on this particular cheaper branded model. But again, if you're looking for something with more storage, then make sure you check all the specifications and make sure you can put drives in here. Also, some of the drives are limited to certain sizes on certain models, so bear that in mind as well. This one has a large metal housing here, which is going to house the actual SSD if you put one inside here. But again, this is also going to add more power and also add more restriction for airflow if you do add one of these in. So bear that in mind. These are very small contained little units. This is obviously going to be a potential overheating issue due to the compact cooling system on these systems. So you have to take everything into account. RAM can sometimes get very hot on here due to the lack of heat sinks on these, and also some of the lack of heat sinks on the NVMe drives. They have no cooling on them, and they can also run a bit hot. Also, there's no airflow inside here, which can also cause a lot of high temperatures. A lot of mini PCs often have fewer RAM slots, storage bays, and also expansion slots compared to larger desktops, making it harder to upgrade components as needed. If you can imagine an SSD inside here, there's not going to be much room for airflow, and that's a big problem. The small size limits the space for cooling fans, which can lead to overheating issues when performing demanding tasks like rendering videos or gaming. Another thing is the small fan size in a mini PC often results in increased noise levels because smaller fans need to spin at higher revs per minute to move the same amount of airflow as a larger fan, leading to more noticeable sound while trying to cool the system effectively. Essentially, the smaller fan means that they have to work harder to achieve the same cooling performance and also generating more noise. Most mini PCs have soldered processors, so if something goes bang, you'll need to purchase a new mini PC. You can see here a lot of the mini PCs will have soldered CPU and GPUs, and this can be problematic if you are going to try to repair something later on down the line. It's not like a desktop PC where you can pop something out and replace it. A lot of this stuff is all surface mounted. Poor ventilation and airflow on mini PCs can lead to overheating again and reduce performance. You can see here this is completely solid and sealed, whereas this side is open. At the back we have our exhaust area for our fan, and you can see this side has got no ventilation whatsoever. This is quite common on some models, so be very careful, whereas this one does have plenty of ventilation on the bottom with a fan and also plenty of ventilation on the sides. Then we have our exhaust fan right here, and we have more ventilation here. So we do need access to airflow, and with having none of this can cause problems. Dust is also a big problem. A buildup of dust can obstruct airflow and insulate components, causing them to retain more heat. Also an imbalance: if more air is coming out than going in, the airflow is imbalanced. Blocked ventilation, which we've talked about, and putting components inside like an SSD is going to restrict more airflow in these mini PCs. So bear all that in mind if you are thinking about buying a mini PC. Now, the price to performance ratio, while some mini PCs can be affordable, high performance models may be significantly more expensive than similar powered desktop PCs. So bear all that in mind if you are buying them. Not all mini PCs are.
When I started drinking warm water to help me lose weight, my friends laughed at me.
You gotta be joking.
But when they saw how fast I was changing, they started doing it themselves. You've probably heard that as you get older, your body will never be the same. You'll have to accept it's harder to lose the extra pounds.
Built the same, some have lower quality components than others, and also some are built better than others. So do your research before dropping a load of money onto a mini PC. Some of these mini PCs can be quite expensive. Some of them are overpriced. So be very careful, because price to performance is important, because you can get some good quality mini PCs at a much lower price than some of the well-known branded models. So let's take a look at another big issue with mini PCs, which I see a lot of complaints about, and that is driver support. And also when you reinstall Windows, sometimes the activation key deactivates. I've seen a lot of people complaining about that. Some mini PCs have their own image with all the drivers already installed on it, and as you install that onto the mini PC, it works perfectly fine and you should have no problems. I've installed Windows straight from Microsoft and installed it onto a mini PC, and I've had no issues with some models. On some of them, I've had issues where the drivers were missing and I've had to hunt and find drivers. It's going to depend on the type of components they've used and whether they're generic or whether they are well known to Microsoft. If they are, then the drivers will come down during the installation process. So also the after support is really important for these products. If you're spending a lot of money, make sure the aftercare is there, because obviously you want some sort of warranty and guarantee and support. So you want to definitely check that out. Another thing which is a big problem with mini PCs, which is thermal management, i.e. we're going to talk about thermal throttling. This is a common thing with mini PCs. You've seen me do reviews. I'm probably one of the very few ones that actually show thermal throttling and also show temperatures. I mean, this is up to 100 Celsius, 101 Celsius, which is pretty toasty for a mini PC. Now, if you're looking to game on something like this, or you're looking to do some intense work on it, be prepared, because Cinebench is pushing that CPU pretty hard on the multi-core test here. And of course, this started getting into the red and causing thermal throttling. And also it was causing package ring thermal throttling as well, and it goes up in percentage there. Some of the ones I found to be pretty good at cooling are Minis Forum, and some of the Geekon ones are pretty decent, and there has been a couple of others that have been okay. So just do your research and make sure that you're viewing all of this before you drop your hard-earned cash on a mini PC. So that's 10 bad things, or more than 10 bad things about mini PCs. I will do 10 good things about mini PCs as well, so you'll get the good and the bad, and we can talk about that in another video. Anyway, with that said, I think that's going to be about it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below, and let me know if there's any things that concern you about mini PCs that are bad. I'll be happy to read your comments.
Okay, I do have one additional item that he only partially brought up, and that is, if you have any pets, pets shed hair, and that hair can also block your cooling airflow. So you have to be very conscientious about that if you have pets. The next thing I've got is the good points.
What you guys, got another video on 10 bad things about mini PCs. I get asked questions about mini PCs all the time, about some of the good things and some of the bad things. So I thought I'd make a video showing you some of the bad things about mini PCs to look out for. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty about...
Hang on a second. I forgot. It's got a bad URL here. That's okay.
What you guys, got another video. We've done 10 bad things. Now let's do 10 good things about mini PCs. So the first thing is space saving design. It takes up minimal desk space due to its small form factor. So this is probably a very big plus sign for a lot of people that are very tight on space, or maybe they just want it for, say, a camper home or something like that. Next, we got portability. Their compact form factor allows you to easily transport, making them suitable for users who need to work on the go. It's easy portable in the sense of you could take this abroad. It's much smaller than, say, a laptop, so that's definitely a plus. Next up, mini PCs can have less cable clutter than full-size computers because of their small form factor. You can see here, you can have this down to, say, for instance, even just two cables, a power cable and a HDMI cable. And there's your Ethernet cable there. You can even remove this and just have Wi-Fi if you wanted to, and that would only leave you two cables, which is very minimal compared to, say, for instance, a large desktop PC. So if you're one of those people that like less clutter, then a mini PC could be for you. Now, some mini PCs have had Wi-Fi antennas on the bottom of the mini PC, and that is a big no-no because it will block the signal. You definitely want to get one with a plastic top where the Wi-Fi antennas are on the top, and that will give you much better signal for Wi-Fi if you do want to use a Wi-Fi capability. Next up, mountable options. Many mini PCs can be mounted behind the monitor to further save space by using the VESA mount like you see right here. Some of these come with VESA mounts where you could just mount this onto the back of the mini PC and then just put it onto the back of your monitor and or TV even, and you could just put that on the back there and just have a couple of cables coming down and you'll be good to go. You won't see any PC, and it will definitely have hardly any cables because you can put them down into some form of trunking and you won't see the cables at all. This is why they're so popular in office PCs, because they will just mount them behind the monitor, as you can see on the screen right here. Next, let's talk about the next option, which I think is pretty good, is using these as media servers. You can mount a mini PC on the back of a TV set and it will work as a client, displaying media from the internet or from your PC or NAS or network or attached network storage. So you can use those for these as well, which I think is a really big plus sign. You just need a remote like this and it makes things super easy. Put the dongle in the front and you can control everything from here. And the good thing about these is they have a little keyboard on the back of them, so you don't have to have a big chunky keyboard lying around. This is just like a remote control. It's super useful and super easy with mini PCs. If you want to turn this into an media server or some sort of like Plex server or something like that, you can use this method. It really is decent for that. And that is probably one of the big reasons why a lot of people will buy mini PCs, for that particular reason, because you could tuck this away somewhere and you would not even know it's there, and you can get access to all your media. Some mini PCs are even like a NAS. You can see here we do have a mini PC that has 4 bays on it, which means we can put in 4 NVMe drives on this one, and there's ones out there that take up to 8, and I've showed you videos on these before. I've just got this one to hand because it was close to me, but basically, yeah, you can make this into a NAS and put whatever operating system you want on there. Affordability, that's another reason. They offer a budget-friendly options for many people who just need basic computing. Something like this is a really cheap option. You can put this on and you can see you can turn this into a home media server as well. It's everyday performance. Most of the mini PCs can handle basic tasks like web browsing, document editing, and even media playback with adequate performance. This little machine here has got 2 LAN ports on here, which is great for a media server as well. If you wanted to put on here some sort of media software like TrueNAS or something like that, they're cost effective as well, often priced lower than traditional desktops with similar processing power, making them a budget-friendly option. As you can see, this B-Link EQ14 mini PC here has an Intel 12th processor, which is the N150. That's 4 cores and 4 threads, which is probably plenty for a lot of people. Comes with 16 gigabytes of DDR4 memory and only a 500 gigabyte SSD. That can be upgraded as well. So you have 2 1 gig NICs on here as well, and also this is only 25 watts TDP, Wi-Fi 6 on this and Bluetooth 5.2 with 4K dual display capability, which is very affordable for a lot of people, especially if you just want to browse the internet, watch YouTube videos, or maybe stream some movies. It can be pretty affordable. This one is £168. This is the N100 version, and it's 16 gigs of DDR4, 512 gigabyte SSD, which is upgradable. It has Windows 11 Pro on it, and it also has Bluetooth 4.2 on this one, and also 2.5 gigabit Ethernet LAN and Wi-Fi 5. And it also has a Type-C port on here. It's £168, and you can get £11 off of that as well, which makes it quite affordable. So if you're looking for something that just does basic computing, then one of these cheaper ones will be ideal. As you can see here, they're also energy efficient, which is another good thing. Generally consuming less power than a full-size desktop. Mini PCs can help lower your electric bills, believe it or not. And this will sit in a corner and you can use it working away. Now, a lot of these budget ones are silent operation. They are pretty quiet to run, but don't get that confused with some of the higher end ones, because they can get quite noisy under full load because of the powerful CPUs in them. But they are highly efficient and also low noise, these budget ones. So that is a plus sign for the budget model, that if you're looking for just a cheap budget mini PC, then these will run quietly, more quiet than, say, some of the ones I've reviewed, which have pretty high end CPUs in them. And if you're worried about upgradability, this one has got space for another drive in here if you need more space. Now, I know I made that one of my 10 bad things, but people misheard what I said. It's on some mini PCs are designed to be easily upgraded, while some of them are not. They have surface mounted parts on them, so you have to be very, very careful in which ones you're going for. But again, upgradability is there on some models, and on some models it's not. But this one, you can put another drive in here, you can replace all of this stuff, and you can also upgrade the memory on a lot of the mini PCs as well. So that is a plus sign as well as a negative if you're looking at some of the models out there. Just be careful which ones you're getting and do your research and check YouTube channels that do full reviews. Also, GPU, we're going to be talking about that because you can connect an eGPU to the internal M.2 PCI Express port or use the OcuLink port on these mini PCs. Now, Minis Forum do some really decent mini PCs. I keep promoting those because they are one of the best, if not the best on the market for mini PCs right now, especially new mini PCs. Again, you're getting 2.5 gigabit Ethernet LAN ports on here, plus DP port, HDMI port, Type-C, USB ports, and that OcuLink, which is really good. And these are not that expensive. You can pick these up pretty cheap. The base model on these is pretty affordable. But yeah, I've done reviews on all of these products. If you want to check my channel for mini PCs, then check. I do a full review on all my stuff. You can see good cooling on these ones as well, and that's why I like Minis Forums. They do actually put decent cooling on their mini PCs, and there's plenty of upgradability on this particular model because there is loads of room for storage. Here we got, I think, 3 on this side here, and I can't remember what was on the other side. You'll have to check my video for a full review of this. But anyway, now on my top 10 bad things about mini PCs, I was using mini PCs as a reference. I wasn't saying those mini PCs are bad. I'm just giving you an opinion on what could be bad on some mini PCs, not the ones that you were seeing on that video. The same thing with good mini PCs. There's not particularly talking about these mini PCs. I'm just using these as a reference so I can give you some of the options to look out for when you are literally buying a mini PC. So when I read comments, when people say I have a mini PC and it's upgradable, and you said it's not upgradable, I'm talking about some mini PCs are not upgradable, not all. So just bear that in mind and listen to what I'm actually saying. This mini PC that you're looking at right here has a full socket on it, which has a CPU which is upgradable. A lot of mini PCs have surface mounted CPUs which are not upgradable. So that would come under not upgradable mini PC, whereas this one would be. So bear that all in mind when you're looking for a mini PC. Make sure it ticks all the boxes on all the things you're looking for in a mini PC, and hopefully you'll be able to get the right mini PC for you. My name has been Brian from briteccomputers.co.uk.
Okay. Now, before I open up the floor, I want to stipulate that I've got a little bit of a demo here. Several months back, I helped a neighbor with a mini PC that was having problems as a tech, and he graciously loaned it to me early this evening, and I got to get it back to him tomorrow. This is his unit. Now, here's the thing. On low height units like this, usually there is no space for a 2.5-inch drive under the bottom. And so that limits you to whatever drives are internal to this. If I take off the bottom, and this is going to give me a headache. Son of a gun. I loosened this up intentionally and it didn't totally loosen up. Okay. This is the inside. I'm gonna get rid of sharing here for a minute. Hang loose for a minute. At least I want to try. Okay. And this is the guts. There's 2 memory modules here, and this is the storage module. An NVMe is used in almost every mini unless it's extremely old, early model. And the memory modules used are usually DDR4, and newer ones are coming out with 5. But real old ones, early models, you may run into DDR3 type memory. Now, as I said, this low height unit, it's only about an inch and a quarter high. There's no place to put a 2.5-inch drive under here on the inside of the base plate. But the higher models that are more than an inch and a quarter thick frequently have a mount point here on the bottom plate for a 2.5-inch drive and a ribbon cable that goes from this plate down inside to connect it, and you can now have a 2.5-inch drive that might be 2 gigabytes, 4 gigabytes. I don't know if they make 8s, but it wouldn't surprise me if they do. Now, in addition to that, the other thing that came up in his presentation on, he called it a mini NAS because it can have a whole bunch of M.2 drives inside of it. He said up to at least one model out there may have as many as 8. You better be ready for sticker shock. The cost of SSDs is very high compared to spinning hard drives. This top comes off. It should be flat, not like that one that was warped. This is a cover for the cooling fan. There's a little ring around here that you have 2 or 3 screws to take out and remove it. In this side here and over where my fingers are at are the antennas for Wi-Fi connectivity. Underneath this plate is the cooling fan. It's unless you have a low power unit like an N processor, Celeron, and maybe a Pentium. Usually those are aluminum type heat sinks that they'll have. When you start getting into i3 and above, they have a copper, and that's very important. These fans can die. I replaced this one, and it's easy to pry the top off of here. In the back side, this side, there's 2 notches in the top panel. You can't see them. There's no way to see them in here, but generally speaking, there's 2 notches that help you get like a knife blade underneath there and very carefully and gingerly go around prying it up lightly, and it'll pop off. And that's all you have to do to get it. These have soldered in laptop CPUs. So their power is not as great as a desktop unit, even with the same basic CPU. This is the minis that I usually use, and I've shown them before. And basically, in these, they come in 2 models, 35 watt and 65 watt. The 65 watt has extra ventilation. It'll run like any desktop that you're used to, unless you're a high-end power user or gamer that has the real high-end stuff. And the 35 watter is in line with most of the minis. The difference is in the 7-inch minis that I just showed, those have a changeable CPU. If I bought a cheap one with an i3, but I needed an i7 processor or even an i5, all I gotta do is get the i5 or 7 processor, take out the i3, put the 5 or 7 in, button it all up with heatsink compound put on. That's it. I'm ready to go. And the operating system should already be installed, and therefore The only change that took place is the CPU chip, and the operating system doesn't care. So I'm opening the floor to any comments on the mini computers, which are one of the hottest products going out there right now. And I've seen in 6 months' time prices nearly double on these simple little computers on the small mini, and the bigger stuff, they've gone up too, but not as much. Desktops are dead for all intents and purposes. Towers, less and less demand for them, less and less of them even being manufactured. Uh, we'll have to see how that all pans out, but there always will be some demand because of gamers and because of people that have other needs for a GPU card with discrete memory, like those that do heavy video editing would be one good example. Anybody got any comments on the topic?
I do.
Why?
So there's been a lot of discussion here about, the cooling. So my question is, if you're using a mini and the fan fails, goes out, is the worst thing that can happen is the machine just overheats and shuts itself down? Or
Yes.
is it possible that it can ruin any of the internal components?
Well, both. It will shut itself down, thermal shutdown. That's what happened on this unit here because the fan wasn't working. So it
Okay.
will shut down. But heat uh, in excess of what the manufacturer recommends degrades electronic components. Therefore, they may have a shorter life, and you may have to replace your unit, shall we say, sooner than you would desire to.
Okay.
I have a comment about heat. I the 13th and 14th gen Intel chips that have these problems with clock speeds being if you overclock them, they will generate too much heat. There is damage that takes place, and it is permanent.
Hmm.
And it can damage not just the CPU but also adjacent components, which could include your RAM, it could include your GPU, it could include a lot of things.
Yeah, your storage, which is your NVMe.
NVMe is also subject to that kind of problem,
Yeah,
hence the
by
heat
the way,
sinks for
Well,
NVMe.
are you talking laptops, Bob, or are you talking minis?
Mini
mini.
PCs and laptops have a lot in common. Their
Yes,
components are very similar.
yes. And the NVMe is the replacement for SATA drives, and they run hotter than a SATA drive. And in a system that has DDR5 memory and a fifth, well, I'm not sure exactly which version of Intel chip, but DDR5 memory may have a Gen 5 NVMe slot. Those get real hot, and you may have to have a heat sink and fan on the heatsink or liquid cooling for the little bugger, but it'll give you phenomenal speed. The memory is faster than DDR4. Each family of DDR memory, as it goes up, the speeds of that memory go up to be complementary with the increase of clock speeds on the CPUs.
And what you have to remember is more speed usually means more heat.
That's right. It really does. And that's why, too, gamers frequently have liquid cool, and they also may have liquid cool on the NVMe. They may have it on their GPU discrete card. Why? Because fans cannot cool this stuff down good enough and fast enough to prevent internal physical damage. to the
Just put the whole thing in your freezer. It'll be fine.
Actually, that's not a bad idea. If you can figure out how to hook up the power supply and put this thing inside the freezer and run it remotely, it's good go. Bert?
I'd like to mention that, you also have to be aware of having things too close to your laptop or computer because it needs airflow.
Yes.
And if you have it, on a bed where it's all around the blanket, there's no airflow to be able to be had. Sometimes when things start to fail a little bit, you can get a USB fan to go underneath the uh, laptop and let that cool it down all the time. But eventually, if you're not, using it well, you could have it just die, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah. Mini PCs, if they're used, for example, as media center PCs, or if you put it behind a monitor, you have to make sure you have clearance so that you have the ventilation.
Yeah, and same for that NAS example that he had.
Yeah, the
That's
NAS.
definitely got to have a lot of airspace because you're talking, it probably only has one fan in it, and you can put four in the model he showed, and he said there was another one with eight NVMe's getting hotter than all heck, and he probably has 32 gigs of RAM at least in the unit. That'll generate lots of heat, but it also depends on how much you take a media server and or a NAS and keep them active. If you're doing a movie, it's fairly active, but it's low level. If you got, say, a small business and you got 4 to 6 employees or something like that in your business, and you're all banging on the same server or NAS, that's going to increase traffic, that's going to increase power demands, and generate lots more heat. And now you may really run into a problem.
Yeah, these are recommended more for individuals than for businesses.
Right.
In my Kangaroo computer, which is old now, is a 32-bit, it still works. But I used to run it on rubber bands. I have rubber bands underneath it
Oh,
as a way to be able to cool it. So it didn't have anything blocking it, against the desktop or something like that.
sure.
And that was a good way to keep it cool for quite a while.
Yeah, there are probably a lot of things around most people's houses that could do a similar kind of function. Um, there's also something that I haven't gotten yet. I'm not sure exactly when I will, but basically, for a person like me, I do open bench testing. As an example, I'm rebuilding a couple of my old PCs, taking out the guts, putting new guts in. Before I put the new guts in, I do an open bench uh, testing of the whole thing, so I can check out the CPU, the memory, any storage, and I got the power supply there. It's not in a case. When I'm satisfied everything's working just fine, I take it all apart into component parts and start putting them inside the case. And then I am done. I will test the whole unit again just to make sure I didn't mess up something by either not connecting something that should have been or vice versa, that I did connect something, but I did it incorrectly. So those are the major things. Now, I am suspecting my other person is not going to be able to show up. I might be able to get him to reschedule for another time, but he belongs to multiple groups and he has other time commitments. So getting back to this, I want to come up here. And I want to get rid of you. And let's see, where are they at? Oh, speak of the devil, and maybe no, that's Terry Moy. Never mind. Okay. I was hoping, but at any rate, boy, I'm having a hard time getting people in. I have on my system 2 other videos. Well, actually, I got 4 other videos, but 2 of them are.
Now I know how
about
intimidating
this is GP chat for beginners. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because it's getting late. And I also have another one here that is total privacy in the trade-off reality worth it. And if you try and have absolute privacy, you're not going to get a whole lot of content out on the internet. That's just the way it is, and it's getting worse and worse. They want at least minimal cookies, and they want, if possible, to have advertising show up because that's their revenue source. Otherwise, they have to charge people to get whatever their content is, just like a lot of newspapers and some magazines have a paywall. As an example, New York Times and Washington Post, they have paywalls, and you have to pay an annual subscription to see some content beyond the headlines that they may give you for free. If you don't want to end up paying for everything, ads are a necessity in today's world, and it's getting worse. I don't know about you guys, but on TV, most of the news channels around either the morning or midday news are actually trying to sell products they get a small commission on for every item purchased. And that's to raise revenue for television. So I don't have a good answer for you beyond that. The rest of the stuff I have in the handout up here are mostly, I call them PSAs for bad things that are going on.
Welcome back to Cord Cutting Today, where we break down some of the biggest stories happening in the world of cord cutting, including today. Roku is rolling out a new update, fixing bugs and different things on Roku TVs and Roku players. We'll tell you what we need to know, why you may want to go update. Venue Sports, the new live TV streaming service from Disney, Fox, and Warner Bros. Discovery, is moving forward and could launch in the next few weeks. We'll tell you why, what we know there. And 41 years ago, something important happened in the world of TV. We'll tell you this and a whole lot more in a second. First, though, if you're new here, please consider hitting that subscribe button or hitting that thumbs up. Doing one or both lets YouTube know you enjoy what we do here, so YouTube recommends our videos to more people, helping us grow, hopefully helping you break free from the high cost of TV and still watch the shows that you enjoy. If you want to learn more about any of the stories we're about to talk about, please click on the show notes down below, or check out the first pinned comment. I'll put a link to every story I talk about there so you can read them for yourself and come up with your own opinion. All right, let's dive into it. Roku is rolling out a new update to Roku TVs and Roku players. This is an update for the Roku OS 14, which launched last year. This is Roku 14.1 with a bunch of numbers behind it. But in short, it seems that this update is heavily focused on bug fixes and improvements. Now, the previous update streamlined the live TV guide, enhanced the voice remote functionality, and added a dedicated kids section to the home screen with that. Roku's slowly doing fixes here, but Roku also has a habit of slipping in new features without any announcements. So when updates like this happens, it does become a little bit of a wild hunt to see if there's anything hidden inside of it. If you notice any changes that you didn't see a few days ago, let me know. Now, most Roku TVs and Roku players have probably updated to this already. If not, you can go into the settings and manually run an update, and it will apply the update for you. I was able to do it both to multiple streaming players and multiple Roku TVs here at the office without any problems. Roku did have a short outage where the update wasn't working after this was announced. I'm assuming some people were hitting on it to try to update that caused the outage. But it's great to see them continually rolling out updates and fixing bugs to make the OS better. All right, next up, Venue Sports, the new live TV streaming service that gives you access to 16 streaming channels like ESPN, FS1, local Fox, local ABCs, and more for a little over $40, has been held up in a lawsuit from Fubo against them. Now, Disney, Fox, Warner Bros. Discovery basically seems like they bought Fubo off to get them to walk away from this because they want to get this launched. Now, according to Sports Business Journal, they think that this new sports streaming service could launch before the Super Bowl. Now, that's at the start of February 2025. I anticipate in the next few weeks we will see this launch. There's waiting for a few things for the court to clear, and now that Fubo has dropped its lawsuit, I expect it will clear, and we'll see this move forward, and we won't have this held up any longer. Now, with this, few things are missing. No CBS content, no NBC content. No, you can add Peacock and you can add Paramount Plus to get that content for the most part. With this, though, I still think that the pricing is a little high. I would have loved to see this come in at $39.99, but Disney, Fox, Warner Bros. Discovery seem to want it to be closer in the 40s. Now, they are giving Fubo $220 million, with an additional 100-some million as a loan in 2026. Plus, Fubo, if all goes well with this deal, will get Hulu Plus Live TV in a merger deal where Disney will own the majority of this new merged streaming service, and Fubo will only own 30% with it. A lot of people are marketing this as Disney buying Fubo. We'll have to wait for the details, but for now, they're not saying that. This sounds like a third entity will be created. Fubo will own 30%, Disney will own 70%. And Disney is not taking any direct control of Fubo as we know it today. Both streaming services will continue to operate as they do now. A lot needs to be worked out with this deal. A deal in principle has been created. The fine print, the details, the nitty-gritty stuff has not been worked out. It'll be interesting. It could be quite some time before we know what the lawyers all hammer out in all this. We'll be keeping a close eye on it over at courtcarsnews.com. So watch for updates. But as we learn more, we'll have full coverage here. But Venue Sports, coming soon. I know a lot of you have been very excited about it, been upset about the delay. We'll see what happens. Next up, Sling TV. Free Stream has added 11 channels. This includes things like Z Nation, Alien Nation, The Doctors, Asylum, Popular Science, Fifth Gear, and more have all launched on Sling TV's free ad-supported streaming service. Check it out in the link in the show notes if you want to learn more about all those channels that have been recently added. Sling TV now has over 400 live TV channels, streaming for free, even if you don't have an account. All right, something big happened 41 years ago this week. ABC bought the remaining shares of the worldwide sports leader, ESPN. Now, at the time, remember, this is pre-Disney owning ABC. ABC was an independent company, much like Fox and CBS and all that were at the time. With this, you see ABC saw the value in ESPN and bought it when ESPN's value was still kind of shaky. It was not the giant juggernaut it is today. They had a joint partnership where they already owned part of it, but they bought the remaining 85% of ESPN and built it up into what we know today. Later, Disney would buy ABC and get ESPN with it. Interestingly now, many people view ESPN as a bigger asset than ABC. I'm not so sure that's completely true, but ESPN has definitely grown significantly since ABC closed that deal. It's interesting. 41 years ago, ABC saw some promise in a struggling small cable sports network called ESPN. This was long before a lot of the other ESPN channels launched, before ESPN's got NFL rights, before all this other stuff happened. They saw some value in it, made a jump, and let's be honest, it probably paid off for them pretty handsomely over the last 40-some years with that. Hey, if you're a Discovery Plus customer, you may have noticed a price hike. Now, we actually broke this news last month. that there would be a price hike when Slings seems like prematurely may have notified some customers. With this, both the ad-supported and ad-free plans will go up $1 a month to it, up to $9.99. Now, the vast majority of this content is available in Max, but some is not. And I know some of you don't care for Max. They just want the Discovery Plus content, and that's what makes this a great option. For that, initially it was reported that Discovery Plus would shut down when Max launched, but because of the outrage and some people wanting just Discovery Plus content at a cheaper price, they elected to keep it, and now they're raising the price on it once again. Let me comment, are you a Discovery Plus fan? I'd love to hear from you. Hey, I just want to say a huge thank you. We've had one of our best weeks in a very long time. It's a very good week here, both with new subscribers, hitting 300,000 subscribers. I know I talked about that earlier, but often many of you don't watch every video, so I wanted to mention it here. Huge thank you. I never thought we would get 300,000. A little over 2 years ago, we had less than 200,000 when I bought the site back. Now we're back over 300,000. It's been about 11 years now since we launched Cord Cutters News. It's hard to believe that in 11 years, millions of people come to the site every month. Millions of views here on the YouTube channel, a million views, I should say, on the YouTube channel. We're very thankful for your support over the time. It really does mean a lot from the staff here at Cord Cutters News. We appreciate it. If you're following us here, please consider maybe subscribing to our daily newsletter. Every week we'll tell you what we need to know, what you may want to go update. Venue Sports, the new live TV streaming service from Disney, Fox, and Warner Bros. Discovery, is moving forward and could launch in the next few weeks. We'll tell you why, what we know there. And 41 years ago, something important happened in the world of TV. We'll tell you this and a whole lot more in a second. First, though, if you're new here, please consider hitting that subscribe button or hitting that thumbs up. Doing one or both lets YouTube know you enjoy what we do here, so YouTube recommends our video.
Okay, get rid of that one. And this is the other one.
Hey, Bob.
Who?
Tim. Did you
Who's
see
that?
Bob's message? Did you see Bob's message? And
Why am I the only one who couldn't see or hear it?
Search me. Did anybody else hear it or not?
They all got it. I
Yeah.
couldn't.
Yeah, we all heard him saw it.
I noticed on my end here some freeze ups of the video, and I don't know whether that's my local connection speed problem or if it's YouTube, because this is live from YouTube.
Yeah, there were
Live?
times that it would sort of freeze.
Yeah.
Was it live or was it recorded?
Pardon?
It's a video from YouTube
Right,
that you were trying to share.
right.
I've never had a problem with this before on Zoom.
I don't even begin to know what to tell you would cause that. If everybody didn't get it, then that's a problem on my end somewhere.
No, I got
Worked
it.
fine.
Yeah,
Worked fine for me.
Me too.
I got it.
Don't know what to tell you, Bob. I got this is the last video, and the rest are articles that you guys need to read about problems. One of the things that was mentioned in the previous video was WhatsApp. There's one specific in these articles on WhatsApp. So anybody here uses the WhatsApp or know of somebody who does, you might want to let them know.
Yeah, I
You're in the
think they were
middle
doing
of
that
a
down in
bustling marketplace. Vendors are shouting their best deals. Strangers are discussing weather updates. And a street performer is sharing tales from a distant land. Now picture yourself walking through that same marketplace wearing noise-canceling headphones and a blindfold. Sure, no one knows where you're headed or what catches your attention, but you're also missing out on all the useful and entertaining tidbits that make the marketplace exciting. This, dear reader, is the modern dilemma of privacy in a nutshell. Privacy, the great fortress. Privacy is your castle, a place where you get to control who enters, who stays out, and what's shared beyond its gates. In the digital age, privacy means keeping your browsing habits, shopping lists, and cat video preferences under lock and key. Tightening privacy settings feels empowering. After all, why should a random algorithm know you've been binge watching 80s sitcoms? But let's face it, the moment you declare war on sharing information, certain conveniences start packing their bags and leaving the party. No location data, say goodbye to accurate weather updates tailored to your area. No sharing your interests. Watch as your news feeds turn into a bland mix of irrelevant content. Think tips on raising llamas when you're allergic to fur. The trade off tango. The reality is simple. The more you guard your data, the less the digital world can personalize experiences for you. It's a classic trade off. Here are some examples to chew on. Navigation versus privacy. GPS apps like Google Maps rely on your location to suggest the fastest routes, but they'll also quietly know your favorite coffee shop. Opting out means staying private, but risking getting hopelessly lost in downtown chaos. Shopping versus anonymity. Personalized ads can be spooky. How do they know I need socks? But they're also better than irrelevant ads. The alternative, wading through endless promos for products you'll never buy. Healthcare alerts versus data safety. Wearables and health apps can notify you of irregular heart rate or missed steps, but they do collect sensitive health data. Not sharing means missing potentially life saving insights. Evolving privacy regulations. Recent years have seen significant advancements in privacy laws and regulations to protect consumer data. For instance, Minnesota Consumer Data Privacy Act, effective from July 2025. It grants consumers rights over their personal data and imposes obligations on businesses regarding data collection and processing. Texas Consumer Privacy Act introduced stricter rules for protecting minors and limiting the sale of location data, ensuring apps anonymize user data unless explicit consent is given. These laws reflect a growing trend toward empowering consumers with greater control over their personal information. Technological advancements and privacy. The integration of artificial intelligence into consumer devices has introduced new privacy considerations. Apple's AI features. Apple's AI capabilities, like Apple Intelligence, have raised concerns about access to sensitive data, such as banking and health information. While Apple claims secure processing, users are advised to review and adjust privacy settings to safeguard their data. These advancements underscore the importance of staying vigilant about how emerging technologies may impact privacy. Balancing privacy and convenience. The good news is you don't have to live in an either or world. It's all about finding your sweet spot on the privacy spectrum. Here's how. Be selective. Share data only with services you trust and understand. Always read privacy policies, or at least skim them like a caffeinated squirrel. Use privacy tools. VPNs, ad blockers, and privacy browsers can help reduce data trails without cutting off all digital perks. Opt for transparency. Look for platforms that allow you to customize what you share. Companies that respect user control often provide better balance. In the end, choosing between privacy and convenience is like deciding between chocolate cake or ice cream. It depends on your cravings. What matters is knowing the cost of each choice and being okay with it. Recent regulatory advancements and technological progress remind us that we need to stay informed to navigate the trade offs of modern privacy effectively. The marketplace of the internet is noisy, vibrant, and full of opportunities. Blindfold optional. So, what's your take? Will you build an impenetrable fortress of privacy or crack open the gates for a little slice of convenience? Whatever your choice, make it consciously. Stay safe, stay secure, and if you need tips on balancing the act, don't hesitate to ask. I'll see you again.
Okay. I think, yeah, there's the one about WhatsApp.
Okay.
And uses QR codes. This is a topic that came up in the last 30 days or so in meetings. And QR codes can be malicious. So these are the main things. Does anybody have last minute comments or questions on that while I get ready to send up the shared article list?
Are you giving us the links for these two, Tim? Like for this WhatsApp thing, we're going to get the link to?
In other words, it's in the handout, I would assume.
Yeah.
It always has been.
Okay.
That's why I don't understand why you aren't understanding this up front. That I said at the very beginning, the handout will have all the links.
Okay.
It always does. I have never made one unless I had nothing to hand out.
And that also helps with my weird glitch, which is probably a network issue. I can go back to the link.
You can't do that.
Watch me.
Yeah.
Now Tim won't let me have the handout.
That's right. You're right. I won't. I'll exclude you.
Say goodnight, Aldo.
Bye, Aldo.
Thank you.
See here.
What was interesting in Buenos Aires, they were using WhatsApp instead of texting.
A lot of people do because it's encrypted, but it doesn't make it. What they're doing with the QR code is getting you to take the picture of the QR code, and it adds their device to your account, so they
Yep.
know everything you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, both Signal and WhatsApp have been used in places where it's not safe to use SMS text.
Okay, you guys should have the document.
Okay, let's see if this messes up for me. Not yet.
Not yet. Not yet.
So it's not just me
it's
this
sent,
time.
No.
So that's got to be the internet.
Yeah, I don't see it either.
Yep.
Yeah, it hasn't arrived.
Nope. Still blank.
Last comment is Auto.
Well, I'll double check here. I can try and send it again.
There
Got
we
it.
go.
It's
All right.
here.
Yep.
All right.
You know what? There may be network issues tonight.
I think there is because
Yeah.
I don't remember having as many problems playing YouTube videos as I saw tonight.
I think you may be right.
And
Yeah, I
we could
was getting
have.
a couple messages about my internet was a problem. So
I didn't see
Yeah.
any messages on my end, which I sometimes have in the past, but it's quite conceivable, especially with the real cold temperatures, that could play havoc with some of the lines or equipment.
yeah,
Or just traffic.
Yeah,
right,
too many people at home. We should
right.
we need to raise the temperature so that more of them will be out and about.
Also, military traffic can take up a lot of bandwidth.
Well, I doubt we got the
Let, let,
military traffic, but
Well, that depends
let
on
me
what the
ask
new administration is doing, but I'll stop there.
let me ask a question about this. I signed up last week for the APCUG meeting, and I took her email, and clicked on the link, filled out the application, and sent it. And it was before 6 o'clock Chicago time. That evening and the next morning, I never got a link for the meeting. So I sent an email to, I can't remember her name, the
Judy?
lady, Judy. Yeah, I sent an email to her saying, hey, I never got the link. Well, you signed up late. She said you can sign up like after like 7 o'clock Pacific time.
yes,
And
which is
could my
nine,
email have been
which is
delayed?
9 o'clock our time.
Yeah, but she said that she didn't get it in time.
Well,
But
they
she
have a
was
cutoff.
what?
A lot of businesses, they close their door at a specific hour. What are you going to do? Break in?
You missed the cutoff. Now, if it's 6 o'clock Chicago time,
No, I sent it before 6 o'clock Chicago time.
yeah, that's
And
4 o'clock her time.
and she said she didn't get it till after 7 her time.
That you're
Yeah,
not
I have.
aware, perhaps, but APCUG has many different people, and Judy is in the fire area.
Yeah,
So she was probably out having a weenie roast.
yeah.
So if you got a problem there, I think it's going to go up in smoke.
Okay.
I guarantee you that because I was at the Linux meeting last week, and she explicitly was given the information to John Kennedy, who relayed it to everybody who attended. And you were at the meeting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, she did send me the link later, but she said I had signed up too late to get it initially.
Well, that's because she got it delayed, and there's no way of her knowing that it was delayed at her end.
Yeah.
You're expecting absolute perfection. That means no fires anywhere, no volcanic eruptions, no earthquakes, no solar flares. Good
And
luck.
not using a third tier internet provider. I have a third tier cell phone provider, and text messages, SMS, I sometimes get them the next day.
Well, she's in a valley, but she's up on a mountainside. That much I
Yeah.
know. And there have been fires in the area.
Yeah.
And Pacific Edison is getting their nuts roasted because they think a number of the fires were caused by their equipment, and they didn't shut down
Yeah.
their power in risk areas quick enough.
It's always a trade off with that.
Yep.
And also, they don't trim the brush
Well,
underneath.
that's one of the big problems is no brush trimming. But when you consider the size of California, that's a big, tall order.
Well, they used to do it, but they cut back.
Yeah.
And that was partly because of environmental regulations.
Mhm.
You just need concrete lawns.
You know, clearing around structures like the Getty Villa can save them. The Getty Villa did not burn because they had at least 30-foot clearance and they had their vents closed.
It's amazing. In fact, there were a lot of people on television news that were saying, "Hey, I moved to this area, and I knew when I bought the property, it was in a fire risk area." Duh.
Yeah, people have also, for the $25 million mansions, they also have their own fire hydrants, which can use their swimming pools for water, and some have their own trained fire brigades. And there are neighborhood volunteer fire brigades. And all of this turned out to be needed, and more.
But they also had that reservoir shut down. I haven't heard anything yet as to why they shut down that reservoir for some repairs and what those repairs were.
A couple of years ago. Yeah, that was shut down for several years.
You don't want to. You don't want a reservoir leaking. You don't want a reservoir failing.
Yeah,
No.
but at the same time too, all these burn areas are going to be prime for mudslides like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
It's going to
Yep.
flow like fresh cement.
Yep. Anyway,
Oh well.
so I'll pick up on that one video that I missed due to whatever network
And don't forget
weirdness
to
was
look at
going on.
Don't forget to look at the articles. There's a lot of security ones that have come out of late. Some of them in the last couple days alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right.
Let's do it.
I got some sort of information about Microsoft now is allowing Windows 11 on the non on the older computers.
Well, it's always had an unsupported version.
Yeah, there's you can do unsupported 11. You may not get all the function and features,
Yeah.
but you're running 11. I'm running 11 right now, but this old machine can only go as high as 23H2. I cannot put 24H2 on. But unsupported versions of 11 require a reasonably high technical and mechanical aptitude to be able to understand how to disable the things that are blocking you from putting it on old computers.
Yeah.
But as far as I've been doing 11 on this old machine for the past three versions of 11. So it's
I see a lot of 10s that can't get past 22H2.
yes.
Yeah.
But I've gotten my machine's even older, and it is on 23H2, but I know it will not go to 24H2. And the reason is a microcode instruction 11 is looking for, and there's no bypass for it. And my processor in this machine does not have that code. The machine next to it is just as old, different manufacturer's processor, and it does have the code. So I could literally take the 11 off of this machine, stick it on the other machine, and be running 11 and upgrade to 24H2.
I think
But
this was an
unsupported.
article. An article is talking about how many PCs are still running Windows 10.
Oh,
It's
that's
like 80%. And so Microsoft's decided that they better, do something, and so that's why they're letting people put 11 on the 10.
Right now, I'm dubious of that article. If I hear it from Microsoft, that's something else. But in general, much of what has to be disabled for unsupported 11 on older hardware are high security features that are
Yeah.
needed in the modern day internet.
There seem to be articles saying that you can do that and other articles saying you can't. And so I would be cautious.
Well, that
Microsoft right now, when you open up various things, tries to say you need 11 and puts a screen up, but doesn't mean you can get it.
no, what it is, and I've got this in 23H2 and I have it in 24H2. Here's two flash drives. The top one is the normal Windows 11. I have like I say, another version for 23 H2, and it installs only on compliant computers. For every old computer, you have to use this bottom one here. This is a doctored 11 that eliminates the security features that lock out the old computers. And this will install just like this one will, just no security features, high-end security features. However, this will not work on this one machine because in 24H2 they added that your computer CPU must have an explicit microcode instruction that originally was created 60 years ago, approximately, I believe for the NSA, and it fell into disuse, but somebody remembered it or found out about it, and it's in all the Core I Intel processors, almost all the Ryzens, but not the first generation, the 1000 series, and there are some other 2000 and maybe 3000 series that do not have this microcode. And the system I'm on right now, the CPU is a Core 2 Duo. It doesn't have it. The other machine next to it is just as old. It's a Phonem 2 processor, but it has the code. So it can, I can take a modified version, just like I've used in the past years, and I can update that machine to 24H2 and think nothing of it. But most people are not that tech savvy. So most people would have zero clue what they're talking about and how to go about making this modified version that'll work on any machine starting, I think it's, I can't remember for certain, but I think the first Intel Core I processor was something like 2009, but I may be wrong about that. And so anything since that manufacturing year probably can run unsupported 11. It's only the 8th generation Intel chips and the majority of Ryzen chips that will be able to run 24H2 without disabling the high-end security features.
Okay.
Believe me, I've done research and stuff on this for many, many months. That's how I know about the microcode. And I've been using the unsupported 11 on multiple machines for at least 3 years now.
Yeah, it was some sort of an article. I can't remember where, whether it was.
Well, in a manner of speaking, I've heard rumors, and that's all it is a rumor. They might make a version of 11 that will install on the old equipment. But until Microsoft says we have such a version, it's nothing but a rumor.
Yeah.
And really, it behooves them, even for 1 or 2 years, to make such a version and hope enough of the people will go out and get new machines that come supporting 11 natively. But I don't know if they got enough brains to do that. And part of the reason for all this is AI. AI is pushing the hardware envelope up, 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 up. It's no longer like a 30 or 45 degree angle. This is going like about a 80 or 90 degree angle, just about on the graph, because AI, they want you to get the versions of CPUs that have an NPU built into it. You do your own local AI searches on the information stored on your computers. And when you go out to use AI otherwise, it will either use the existing internet connected stuff, or it will do a combination and use your NPU to translate things quicker and give you faster response. It's nutty, but most people honestly don't need AI. But right now, there is some AI out there right now, like Gemini. You can put that on your smartphone. I don't care whose smartphone you have. You can go to the store and put Google Gemini on it. You can be walking around, say, in a supermarket or in a department store, et cetera, yakking away on the phone, and you're not talking to anybody other than an AI bot, having a total conversation. And with the number of people affected with some degree of mental problems, that can be like a lifesaver to some of them. They think they're talking to somebody that gives them an intelligent conversation, whether it's all true or only partially true. Doesn't matter. It makes them feel better.